Okay, sorry about that, class. Once again, good morning, boys and girls. Welcome to the Wausau Distance Education Center. My name is Jonathan, and I am your teacher for this class. This is PLAR History and Geography. Once again, this is PLAR History and Geography. So I want to thank for all those out there listening in on this morning, and those watching on your laptop, computer, on the Bridget software. Okay, so for those at home, you can radio in at 1-800-465-7144. That's 1-800-465-7144. Okay, just some housekeeping items. Just a reminder, you can always call me at my office at the 1-800 number at the Wausau Distance Education Center. So that's 1-800-667 3703. That's the toll-free number. So that's 1-800-667-3703. And my extension is 2221. So my extension is 2221. Okay, for those at home on their laptop, on their computer, using the Bridger software, you can see my smartboard. My email is posted. So my email is jho@nnec.on.ca. So that's jho@nnec.on.ca. You can also contact me by Facebook and YouTube. So my Facebook name is jho wasa. And that's the same thing for my YouTube page. It's jho at Wausau. So Ken, this is a 9-week program. We're together for 9 weeks. History and geography. So history will be at the first half, and then we'll switch gears and go on to geography in the second half. Okay, so this is a 9-week program. And yeah, I think that's all the housekeeping items we got for today. Again, if you have any questions, any concerns, anything not sure of, please get a hold of me, contact me. There's many ways to get a hold of me. So last week we were looking at history with lesson 1. This is week 1, lesson 2. We're going to continue with lesson 1 where we left off last time on Tuesday. So just a reminder, by the end of this lesson, your expectation will be that you will be able to demonstrate an understanding of what happened in Canada between 1900 to 1914. Okay, so that's your learning expectation. So you'll be able to demonstrate an understanding of what happened in Canada between 1900 to 1914. So your learning goals for today is that we're going to continue looking at immigration from last class. Then you will be learning about the reciprocity issue. You'll learn about conscription, the name and details of the two battles Canada fought in World War One, the income tax, the guilt calls, and the purpose of the League of Nations. Okay, so lots of topic we'll be covering today, and we'll see how far we get. So just a little recap of what we covered last week. Just a reminder, all of last week's material is now posted on my YouTube page. So at any time you feel like you have missed something, you can always go back on the YouTube page. Just Google jho wasa, and it should be there. Again, if you have any difficulty accessing it, just let me know. Okay, so again, we're looking at Canada in the early 20th century, looking at 1900 to 1914. Perfect. So as I was saying, you're looking at Canada in the early 20th century from 1900 to 1914. This is a topic that we'll be covering in lesson 1. So last week we talked a lot about Canada's Prime Minister Wilfrid Laurier and what he did. Remember, his goal was to build Western provinces, build out railroads, control Canada's own defenses. This was his vision. This is what he wanted to do during this time period. We also looked at quickly at the Boer War. This is important because during this time period, Canada was really linked to the British Empire or the British, civilization. Whereas in Canada, we had the English and the French. Okay, we got Fort Hope on the line. Can Fort Hope hear me?
Yes, I hear you loud and clear.
Perfect. Thank you so much for calling in on this morning. Who's over there at Fort Hope right now?
We have Clinton as Lucan,
Clinton, okay.
and that's it for now.
That's it for now. All right, perfect.
As they come in, they'll tell you.
Sounds great. Thank you so much over there at Fort Hope. Appreciate that. So as I was saying, we talked about the Boer War last time. During this time period in Canada, we had the English and the French, who were two dominant
One
groups.
moment.
Okay.
What page are you on?
If you were looking on your textbook,
No, computer no good here. Sound like a looking at.
so if you're looking at your textbook, it should be on page one of the textbook. Page one.
Okay.
Page one. So we're looking at the change in face of Canada. I'm just going over quickly about the Boer War, which is the second section in bold capital letters. Again, this is just a little recap of what we covered last class, okay? All right, so also last class we talked about immigration. During this time period, Canada experienced tons of growth in its population. One factor was the Yukon Gold Rush, where people heard about there was gold in the Yukon, so tons of people immigrated over so that they can perhaps find some gold or some wealth. There's also other factors too, such as jobs, better quality of living, etc. So this is a big time period for Canada in the early 20th century. I think we left off over here where we talked about the Chinese head tax, about racism, where Canada was welcome lots of people, especially from the England, Scotland, white Americans from Europe over to Canada. However, Canada wasn't so welcoming for people in Asia, African American. So something that Canada imposed, like we talked about last class, was the Chinese head tax. So the Chinese head tax was basically like a fee that Chinese citizens had to pay in order if they wanted to enter Canada. Uh, the main reason why Canada did this because the English thought that new immigrants of color coming to Canada would, threaten their dominance. They didn't want other people coming into Canada and taking over their culture, their dominance. This is what the English felt. Um, the French also did the same thing. They, wasn't really welcoming to these immigrants because they feared that they would be absorbed into the English culture. So the French really wanted to maintain their identity and their culture. So yeah, they post racism and discrimination against people of color kind of thing. And then there's a little article that I talked about last time, how Canada apologized for the Chinese head tax. And this is where we're gonna continue today. Are you guys okay over there, over at Fort Hope? Any questions? Am I going too fast or anything? If anything doesn't make sense, just let me know, and I will do my best to slow it down and answer all your questions. Okay, so now we're gonna pick up where we last left off. So this is still part of lesson one. So all this material will be in your assignment one. Okay, so all the information is once again in your textbook. You can always refer back to your textbook. But this material that I'm covering right now and from last class is for assignment one. So in the next few minutes, I'm gonna go through these slides, this information, and then boom, lesson one should be completed. You should now be able to complete lesson one. So right now, boys and girls in class, we're gonna talk about women and immigration. So we're gonna continue the topic with immigration. So before, there were tons of men that immigrated over. Men were always welcome, but men needed women as well, for specific reasons as well. So women's role when they came over to Canada was to provide help with their family. So their job was to be in the home, helping their families, help run the farm, clean the land, okay, yeah, take care of the household items, like cooking, cleaning, taking care of the children, any farm work materials. These are the basics of the woman's role when they came to Canada. Okay, their job was to stay inside the home, care for the family, cook, clean, uh, and basically this was where the gender expectations for these women. They had no property rights. Okay, so they couldn't really own any land. That was basically all men. But they only had specific jobs, which was really in the home, like I said, which is, really cooking, being a maid, being a nurse, being a teacher, educating children. They really had no freedom besides all these things, and they had little privacy. Women were also not allowed to go to school. They didn't have any like professional jobs or etc. So mainly, like I said, women's role during this time period for immigrants was to be in their home. These were the gender-specific expectation. So cooking, cleaning, taking care of the kids, being a teacher, a nurse. They had no freedom, no properties. These are all key informations for women during the immigration. Okay. Again, if there's any questions, just let me know. All these materials are in your textbook. If you're able to see my smartboard and see my screen, you can definitely follow along. But if you can't, like I said, I will post all my lessons right after the lesson onto YouTube that you can always look back to as well. Okay, so this is what women experience. All right, so the next moving along, we're going to look at typical immigrant hardship. So in your textbook, you should see this little bold writing in capital, typical immigrant hardships if you're following along. So those who are following along and listening, it should be on page page 2 of your textbook, right at the bottom, right at the bottom. Okay, page 2 of your textbook. So typical hardship that any immigrant face, there were tons. There were tons. So keep in mind there is a question in assignment 1 based on this questions, okay? So just think to yourself if you had to move from one community to another community or one town to another or another home to another or a different country for instance, there's many difficulties or factors that you may encounter. But during this time period for Canada, there were tons. There were tons. One of them was that English was not their first language. Okay, so imagine coming from a different country, now coming to Canada, where tons of people talked English as their main language, and you didn't know. Okay, so it's pretty difficult, and how to communicate as well. Another factor is that they had different race, different religion. Okay, so there's difference there. As a result of that, they faced discrimination against them. People were settled in the West, in Canada. They did a lot of hard work, especially hard work on the land, cleaning, and on the farm. Okay, so they didn't really have the typical, fancy jobs with good pay. They did the really basic, slow income work kind of thing. Weather was another factor. Okay, as we all know, especially in, I don't know, for example, in Northern Ontario, it's really, really cold. So weather was another factor. Okay, so myself, I'm from Southern Ontario, where I was born and raised. I went to Thunder Bay for school. Then I came up here to Lookout. So I definitely experienced a big change in terms of weather. in terms of weather. So people can experience the same thing too for new immigrants coming over to Canada as well. As for farmers, they may not have the proper tools. Okay, so I may need to dig some crops, dig the soil, but I may not have a shovel, for example. So these are all factors that they include. They have little education, so they just didn't really have little education, lack of knowledge on what was Canada. They couldn't read or speak the language like we talked about, and it was all these factors came into play. Like I said, they didn't have good jobs. They really worked on poor paying jobs, with jobs that were dangerous, where most people wouldn't do, and they live in poor living conditions as well. So the home wasn't really the ideal living conditions. So again, there's many factors that new immigrants coming over to Canada during this time period face. Uh, just tons, just tons. So just keep that in mind. There is a question on your first assignment on this question. Okay. Alright, so my next slide on my smartboard is example of assignment one. Assignment one. So we saw this last class. So for all those listening in their communities, those watching along, in your workbook, so you should have your textbook, which is your reading material. You should also have a workbook in your binder as well. So your workbook is basically all your assignments with all the questions that you need to answer and submit to me. Keep in mind that you need to submit all these assignments to me. I will mark it. You need to pass all the assignments, and then in order to write the final test. Okay, if you don't pass any assignments or didn't do too well, you cannot write the test just yet. You will need to resubmit the work. I will remark it and give you feedback. And then once it's up to par, we can move on along to the test. But make sure we need to answer all the assignments. Okay, you can uh, finish assignment one and then get it to me, email it to me, fax it to me, get it to your DEC to scan it, and then I'll mark it. That way I know that you're on pace, and then I will give it back to you in feedback as well. Okay, so last week, uh, we kind of I kind of went over question one in assignment one. So I'm just gonna go over the questions again. So assignment one is out of 8 marks. Okay, out of 8 marks, just keep that in mind. That's at the very top. So question one asks, what did Prime Minister Laurier and his government push for during his leadership? Okay, remember to write in complete full sentences. That was out of 2 marks. Question number two was what we covered today. What were women required to do as immigrants? What were women required to do as immigrants? Okay, I quickly talked about that today at the very beginning. So if you remember, you can jot it down. If not, you can always refer back to your textbook and look for the answer again. Again, that is out of 2 marks. 2 marks. So for example, I will write in full sentence, woman were required to do no, and then dot, 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 dot. Okay, then your answer, okay? Full complete sentences, that's out of 2 marks as well. Next question on assignment one is question number three. Name two common immigrant hardship. There were tons. There were tons. There were tons of hardship that immigrants face. Just name me two. Two common ones. Okay? Again, full sentences, complete proper grammar and structure as well. Again, that's out of 2 marks. Out of 2 marks. Okay. Are there any questions for over there at Fort Hope? Are we over okay? Is Clinton following along? Any questions over there? If there's any questions, just let me know, and I will do my best to answer your question. All right, so move along. This is still a part of assignment one. This is the last part that we gotta do. I got a great question over here. We got a question with two, it asks, with 2 marks, does it have to be 2 sentences? Not necessarily. Okay, it's not necessarily. If I go back a page. So, for example, it says, what were women required to do as immigrants? For example, if it's wrote down as, taking care of the kids or taking care of the family. Okay, so you wrote that women were required to do dot dot dot, for example, to take care of the family, for example. Okay, that will be a 1 mark. Okay, but you can also write and etc. So I'm looking for two things. Okay, just keep that in mind. If it's 2 marks, looking for two things, not necessarily 2 sentences, but 2 facts, information. You can always split your facts into 2 separate sentences. That's fine too. But I'm looking for key information. For example, the next question was like name 2 common immigrant hardships. Okay, immigrant face, you know, weather, language, etc. Okay, so I'm looking for 2 main points. Okay, for example, like I said last class, if the question is out of 5 marks, then I will be looking for more in-depth answer as well. Hopefully that answered your questions. Okay. Again, if you have any more questions, let me know. If it's something that I'm not sure of, just let me know, and I will let you know. Okay. That was a great question, by the way. Okay, as we're talking about, we'll move on to the next slide, which is the last topic we're gonna talk about in regards to lesson one. So we're gonna look at the reciprocity issue or reciprocity agreement. Okay. Again, this is all in your textbook. You can always refer back to it. Just look for the bold capital letter heading as your subheading. Okay, so what was this agreement? What was this issue? It was negotiated in 1911 between Prime Minister Laurier and the U.S. President William Taft. So basically, what they agreed upon was that Canada and the U.S. would be allowed to trade goods without tax. So they can trade any materials back and forth, any goods, any supplies back and forth without any paying tax. So yeah, so Canada and US, 2 nations, 2 countries, they can trade back and forth with each other because Canada may have something that the US wants and vice versa. So we can trade it, negotiate it back and forth and without paying tax. Some Canadians felt that Canada would become suppliers of raw materials for the United States. They would now shift away from the east-west to north and south. Okay, so before Canada thought it was ideal and best to trade within Canada. Okay, that's why I'm saying east and west. Going across only Canada. But now we're trading north and south because we're going across from top and bottom from different countries as well. So this is what the agreement was. Okay, so it was negotiated in 1911. It was between Prime Minister Laurier and President Taft of the United States. And basically what it said was that the 2 countries would be allowed to trade goods without additional tax. There were some, you know, issues and conflicts with this agreement, mainly because Canadian thought uh, Canadians thought that Canada would be more like the United States if we continued to allow this to happen. Like I said, Canada really wanted his own identity, his own culture. By allowing this economic beneficial agreement, Canada thought that they will lead to more, be more like a dominant American nation as well. So for those looking at home on the Bridge of Software, this little neat little picture, little propaganda picture of the little farmer and two pigs. So you got the farmer over here uh, doing lots of hard work trying to feed all the pigs, and simply the United States, which is a bigger, more powerful country, is eating all the food right here. And this is really Canada over here saying like, hey, you should stop kind of thing, you know, you should put your kind of own weight kind of thing. So this is the fear that kind of happens. So Canada would do all this work, make all these supplies of raw material, and the United States would just come and take them all in a way. So a bit of controversy right here with this issue. All right, so like I said, some were for it and some went against it. And some were for this agreement. Okay, and as you can see on my slide, there is question number 4. Again, worth 2 marks on this topic. The question asks, what was the reciprocity issue and when was it negotiated? Okay, so basically, one mark for stating what it is, and the other mark, when was it negotiated? So the date, the year, the time, etc. Okay? Are there any questions or on Fort Hope as what to do for assignment 1? So you should now be able to complete assignment 1. So right after this lesson, you can quickly do assignment 1 and get it to me as soon as you can. I'll mark it and get it back to you as well. Okay? Alright, so that was assignment 1. We're going to still continue with lesson 1 because we're still talking about Canada in their early 20th century or the early 1900s. So the stuff I'm going to talk about now, the stuff I'm going to cover now is for assignment 2, and we're going to be looking at World War One. World War One. Okay? So for those who are listening at home, looking at your textbook, that is on starting on page 3. Page 3 of your textbook. Okay? Alright. So let's talk about World War One. World War One. So I can see World War One took place in 1914 to 1918. That is not what I want to do. Alright. 1914 to 1918. So I'm sure a lot of you have heard about World War One, one of the major battles and wars throughout the history of time. So let's quickly talk about what is it and why did it happen and Canada's involvement during this time. So, like I said, we're still talking about the early 1900s. Talk about Europe during this time. So during this time period, many countries in Europe want to become stronger and bigger. There was really an unbalance in terms of power in all the different nations. Um, there was military where people always want the best weapons, the best tools. Uh, there was also nationalism where people take pride in their own country and their own sense of culture and identity. I think it's important to really understand your culture and your identity, where you come from. This is what was really experienced during this time period. There's also alliance where different countries, had different agreements with one another, where basically, hey, if you're in trouble, we will come help you. And if I'm in trouble, you will come and help me. So that was the mindset uh, during this time period. There's also like imperialism, where people wanted to impose their culture onto others. So For example, if I'm like French, I want to expose French culture to the rest of the world kind of thing because I think I'm the best. Because yeah, that's basically what was the mindset during this time period. Because of that, there's a lot of conflicts and issues between different countries this time period. All right, so what happened was that in 1882, uh, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy formed the Triple Alliance. Formed the Triple Alliance. So like I said, there was really at this time period where people, different countries formed like groups and teams. For example, like, hey, if you got in trouble, we will help you kind of thing. So Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy form a group called the Triple Alliance. Because of that, uh, Russia, France, and Britain fear that if these people are teaming up, we should form our little group as well. So Britain, France, and Russia form another group of their own called the Triple Entente. Triple Entente. So basically, as we talked about before, Canada was really linked to Britain, the British Empire. So basically, wherever Britain did, Canada did. So basically, Canada was involved too. But I'll talking about that in a moment. So if I scroll down on my screen, for those who are watching, I got a little map right here. So you can see from this map, the Triple Alliance. It's a little map of Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. And on the other side, you got the map of Britain in red, Russia in red, and France in red, called the Triple Entente. So these were the two groups, uh, you know, kind of like uh, causing chaos and conflicts with one another in a way. My other little picture, little diagram is a map of the whole world. As you can see, uh, you got green, you got yellowish orange, and you got gray. So basically, this little map of layout of basically the countries that were linked together, that were teaming up together against one another. So the yellow was the they were the triple alliance, and the green were the triple entente. And also have a bit of gray on this, which means that the countries were neutral. So all the nations, all the gray spots on this world map means that they were not involved in the war. They were neutral. Okay, so basically it was green versus yellowish orange in a way. So basically, what happened that led to the war, like I said, it was all these little issues where countries want to be the best, they want to gain power, they want to gain land from one another. So really what happened, what really started World War One was that in June 28th, 1914, Serbian extremists assassinated Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria. Okay, so a Serbian group assassinated Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria. Because of this, Austria-Hungary attacked Serbia for this. And then Germany announced support for Austria-Hungary. They were like, hey, we're gonna help you out. And then Russia was like, okay, well, we're gonna announce support for Serbia in a way. And then Germany invaded Berlin, which is like a neutral ground, on the way towards France, invading France. And then Britain supported Berlin, uh, and this because of this kind of like started World War One. So then Britain declared war on Germany on August 4th, 1914. So there's a bunch of serious events that happened, which led to World War One. So we have a new prime minister in Canada during this time period. His name was Robert Borden. So if you guys have a Canadian $100 bill, his face is on it. That's how you will remember him. So during this time period, during World War One, Borden promised Britain that hey, we will help you out. Okay, if you're going to battle, so are we. Because like I said, Canada's really linked to the British Empire during this time period. So whatever Britain did, Canada was involved too in a way. So like I said, Robert Borden, the Canada Prime Minister, was like, hey, if Britain's gonna go to war, we'll help you out. We'll do whatever we can to help you during this battle. But many Canadians um, didn't want to go to war because obviously they were afraid of dying. Right? So you may ask your questions like, hey, if you were called upon to go to war for your country, would you go? Right? So many Canadians during this time period, uh, they they didn't want to go. They refused. They didn't volunteer. They didn't want to go. So what happened was that Canada created something called the Conscription Act or Conscription Crisis. So basically, what conscription was basically it stated that all the young men aged between 15 and 44 had to go to war. They had to go. Okay, they had to go. If you're a young man between age 15 to 44, you must go. You must go to war. Okay, so obviously you have no choice at this point. Before, yeah, you can volunteer to go to war, but obviously there was criteria you got to meet in terms of health, your heights, if you can see well or hear well. But since not many people volunteered to go into battle, uh, the government created the conscription crisis, which made that every young man aged between 15 to 44, they must go. You must go. You don't have a choice. You must go. However, French Canadian opposed this. Talk about the French again. They were like, no, we don't want to go. So when they were called upon, they didn't show up. So basically, in the end, about 32,000 soldiers were volunteer to battle in order to fight in World War One over in Europe. Okay, so we sent a lot of men into battles. For those who didn't, qualify or too young or too old or didn't have good health, uh, stayed at home back in Canada, but they were still a part of the war as well. Everyone was involved. Everyone did some part of their own. So people who were at home, what they did was that they obviously didn't fight in the war, but what they did was that they produced food, weapons, clothing, medical supplies for the troops. Okay, so other young kids they'll farm, make weapons in the factories, sew some clothes together, make some medical supplies so that we can ship over to Europe so that men's in battle can have supplies when they need. Uh, Remember when I talked about women's role in the early 1900, how they couldn't work or do a men's job. All they had to do was take care of the family. This is kind of like the shift in a time period. Uh, since all the men left to Europe for battles, uh, no one could really work in the factories. No one could work in factories. So what women did was that they took over men's job. Women took over men's job in factory, and surprisingly, they did pretty well. They did pretty well. They did exactly what was needed to be done. So yeah, so that was a little shift in terms of the time period. Okay. All right. So move along my next slide. Uh, Cook talks about Remembrance Day, how it marks the day of remember the end of the World War One. So I'm going to talk about that more afterwards, but I'm going to continue with the lesson. All right, I'm going to talk about Canada's role in terms of military in World War One. Again, this is questions that you will see in assignment two. Assignment two. Okay, so like I said, Britain was involved in World War One. Canada was linked to the British Empire. Therefore, Canada, boom, was involved in the war as well. So Canada, there's obviously World War One took place over a 4 year time period, and there were many battles that the Canadian military were involved in. The first major battle that took place was the Battle of Ypres, Ypres, and that took place in France in 1915. So Canada was in this battle called Battle of Ypres. So what was significant about this battle was that German troops, German army military, used a brand new weapon called chlorine gas. This is extremely deadly. Okay, because before, we're using guns, just in terms of battles, but they were just surprised. Germany created this new deadly weapon called chlorine gas. It's basically like a gas, um, a really poisonous gas that really burns your eyes, your nose, your lungs, and basically you just like suffocate and you just die that way. So this was extremely deadly. It caught many soldiers off guard. We didn't expect this at all. Obviously, like I said, there was guns, plane dropping bombs, but nothing like a gas attack before. This is why the Battle of Ypres was really important and significant. The next battle that Canada, a major battle that Canada was involved in was the Battle of Vimy Ridge. Vimy Ridge. Okay. This was Canada's first military victory. This was the first battle that we won in Vimy Ridge. Because of that, we were awarded 4 Victorian Crosses at the battle. So this is, a sign that, hey, Canada did well, and we won this battle. So I'm gonna quickly jump gears a bit. I know we're almost running out of time for today, so I'm gonna quickly jump to assignment two. Assignment two. So again, if you look in your student workbook, we just went over assignment one, but now I want you to turn into page, not page, but assignment two. Look for assignment two. Okay. Um, we won't be able to finish this lesson today, but there are some questions in assignment two that you can start answering. Okay, you can start answering. So assignment two, question one was what was conscription? What was conscription? Okay, and that is worth 2 marks. Okay, so remember to write in full, complete sentences. Write clearly, neatly, so that I can see it. If I can't see it or can't read it, then I can't mark it. Okay, so make sure you keep those in mind as well. So question number 1, assignment 2 was what was conscription? Again, you can start the question was conscription was dot 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 dot. Okay, question number 2 in assignment 2 was provide the name and some details about each of the 2 battles mentioned in the text that Canada fought during World War One. Again, like I said, all the information, all the answers to these questions are in your textbook, so you can always refer back into your text, look through or read through the text again, and try to find an answer. So provide name and some details of each of the 2 battles. Again, not just one, but 2 battles mentioned in the text or during my lesson that Canada fought during World War One. Okay, so you're saying 2 battles. So that's worth 4 marks. So basically, I'm looking for 1 mark for the name, 1 mark of why that battle was significant in terms of Canada's relation, and another mark for the second battle, and again another mark for why was that significant during the war. Okay, so it's 4 marks. Just keep that in mind. Okay, 4 marks, not just 2 marks, but 4 marks. A mark each for the name of the battle, and mark each for naming why it was significant. All right, and those are just the 2 questions that you're able to do now for assignment 2. Like I said, assignment 1, you can answer that now, complete it. Please do it as soon as you can. Today will be great, by the end of this weekend will be great, and then just get it to me. That way I can mark it, get it back to you, something that you don't have to worry about, and they can start assignment 2. Fortunately, we won't be able to finish assignment this lesson today, but we'll continue it off next class. Just a little background information, some Canada's involvement in terms of flying, in terms of victories in air. We got this Canadian called Billy Bishop, famous veteran pilot. He dropped many bombs on. He was really aggressive, and for his style, he was really reckless. And yeah, another key figure name too. Also during war battles, Canadian soldier fought directly across from the Triple Entente. During battles, the soldier had to climb out of their trenches to pass through an area called a no man land. No man land. So basically, you have a little trench, so a little ditch, and then you got a whole land, another ditch. Okay, so you got like, you know, team 1 over here facing against team 2. Okay, this is what was the style of fighting in World War One. So you got, team 1 versus team 2, or nation versus other nation. Then you got something's called over here as no man's land. Alright, so this spot right here. What's unique about No Man's Land was that, it was covered in barbed wires, mud. It was an area that was not controlled by anyone. So anyone basically entering this like No Man's Land was due to like be shot and killed kind of thing. So it was important that when fighting, people like stay in little trenches, and fought through that way kind of thing. In terms of indigenous First Nation content, there was a famous First Nation soldier. His name was Francis. I'm not even gonna try to pronounce the last name. Uh, But yeah, he was a brave Canadian military soldier. He was really effective in terms of his sniping abilities in World War I. So for those, no, there was some First Nations indigenous content involved in World War I too. So we do have a famous sniper, you would say, that Canada had during World War I as well. Yeah, just some other neat background information about World War I. I think I'm gonna stop it here. That way, I'm gonna give you the class and boys and girls just a few minutes to go back into your textbook, work on assignment one, maybe even start assignment two, kind of thing. I'm here if you have any questions that I can answer right now, something that I'm not sure, but I think I'm gonna stop it here for today, and we're gonna continue off, finishing off lesson one, I should say, next class. Okay, so again, there's many ways to get a hold of me. You can find me on Facebook. You can add me as a friend at jhowasa. That way we can communicate back and forth. I can send you your marks that way too. For those in communities up north who are unable to have internet access or hear this lesson, you can always go back into my YouTube page again at jhawasa. I will upload this lesson right after this is done. This